Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be seeing how far we can get today on a Puzzle Rush, chess.com. My personal best is 55. Haven't been able to get there in a while, hoping I can finally get there. But along the way, I'll be explaining a little bit of my thought process and how you can get there too. Let's go. Now, I clicked survival so that I would have enough time to talk about everything I want. But I have to tell you that the most common type of tactic on chess.com, especially on Puzzle Rush, is the back rank mate. All we have to do is deliver pieces to the back rank, checking the king. Now, this one's a pretty simple one. We just have to figure out how to get the queen or the rook to coordinate on the same squares so that we can actually checkmate the king. What I look at when I first see this is these 6 squares. That's how I know. That's how I know this is a back rank problem. This one isn't much different than anything else. So we have to first see, can we just go to the back rank with the queen? No, there's a rook there. Can we go with a rook? No, the rook guards that square as well. Not to mention there's a queen here. So the fact that there is a rook and a queen, this is kind of a hack that doesn't work in real chess but does work in Puzzle Rush games, is there are 2 pieces guarding that d8 square. You can only really get rid of one or solve one of those problems at a time. So while in a real game you're probably not going to get this scenario, when you're doing a Puzzle Rush, if you want a high score, try to ignore squares that are attacked or defended more than 2 times, because the chances of the answer being there are low. So what we're going to try to do instead is use a rook to get to the back rank. And we see that this square is guarded only once by the rook. And that's a big hint of what we're supposed to use the queen for. Notice the queen is attacked by the knight. So the game is asking us, move your queen to figure out how to back rank mate. And so we can just take this rook. Checkmate. So what we did there is we removed the defender of that square. Okay, yet again, I see the same idea. It's a back rank mate. Easy. Okay, queen here. That rook is hanging for free. That is probably the answer just to take it. I say, okay, I take it. Where does it go? When a queen is 2 squares away from a king, it guards all 3. So I see that there's only 1 square the king can go to. After that, and then a very, very easy thing to see, okay, it's not going to let me show you, is that when a queen stands on top of a king, that king is checkmated when the king's against the edge of the board. So that's a pretty simple one. Okay, we have a hanging queen. If you can't just immediately checkmate the king in one move, the next thing you want to do is look for targets. And what I see is a queen and a bishop are hanging. They're undefended. They're completely undefended. There's nothing holding them, nothing guarding them, so they can be taken for free. We're just going to do this. Okay, we are playing white. I see that I have a battery. I recently taught this to a student, the concept of a battery, when pieces are lined up, and we have a third attacker here. Yet again, we have a king on the back rank, blocked by either a pawn or, in this case, the knight guarding a square. So what we have is, in effect, a back rank situation. So when I first see the king, I think back rank. How can we get to the back rank? That's easy. We can take a rook right away. And then I have to figure out what's so hard about this puzzle. What more is there? I see that the bishop can actually block. A lot of players will miss this in real games, so this is a tactic you should know. A bishop that's out on the board, players tend to think that the pieces only go forward. Like if a bishop is on d5, it attacks the white king like this. They fail to realize that a bishop can actually block a back rank. So that's something to look out for. And when I look at that, when I see the bishop can come back, I realize why this has to be a knight. Here, it attacks that square too. So what we're going to do is go check. And what would happen would be that bishop would have blocked. It would have come back to block, and we would take it. The game doesn't make us do that for Puzzle Rush, so we're just going to skip that step. Okay, fairly simple mate in 1. There's nothing to talk about. When you see a mate in 1, you take it. Okay. Classic attack on h7. h7 is one of the weakest squares on the board when the king is castled because it's only guarded by the king. In the early game, before the king is castled, it tends to be f2 and f7. because only the king guards that. But once the king is castled, we have a rook and king attacking that square, so it's heavily guarded. And in this particular case, we've got 3 attacks. However, when a king castles, the rook is removed from h8, and so this square becomes weak. h7 becomes weak. So we can just checkmate in 1. How do I see that? I simply see that I have a bishop attacking it and a queen attacking it. When you see a castled king in this formation, that should be a visual cue that h7 is the attack point. We call those focal points of an attack. You usually have to pick one square or the other. Very key attacking idea for beginner players. You don't want to try to attack all 3 squares. Pick one and focus your forces there. In this case, it's h7. That should be the easiest one in most circumstances. Simple. Again, battery. This is the concept of the battery. On the last one, we attacked, in this case, it'd be h2, but it was h7. It's a symmetrical square. So for white, it's called h2. This is the same idea. It's just moved over a square. Remember I said that you should look for a focal point and focus on one? Well, this is the g2 square. Simple. Okay. This is an easy back rank mate. How do I see a back rank mate? Now, I want you to realize that when I see the answer to these things at the lower levels, I haven't even really looked at this side of the board. None of this seems to matter to me. When I first look at the board, I'm seeing checks mostly, but I'm also looking at the weakness of the king. And what I see is that this is the back rank formation missing a square. That's what makes this a little bit more complicated than the previous ones. It's not mate in 1, but I see that there's a hole here. We already saw an example where a knight covers that hole. The knight was here at that time. It was f6, and it was covering the h7 square. But now we see it on the opposite side of the board. How can we cover that h2 square? Then I look for resources to do that. I first find the weakness in white's camp, then I look for the black resources. Very key idea here, and so I'm going to use that pawn to do it. But wait a minute. Phoenix, isn't that capturable? Yes, it is. But I have another one, and I'll take back, and it's covered again. But wait, isn't that attackable by the king? No, we'll see why. Check. And now this queen sees through the white pawn to that square. Check. And finally, checkmate. Okay. So I think that by visualizing the formations of pieces, you're able to see this very, very quickly and very, very simply. All right, classic formation. This is kind of like a back rank mate, except it's what we could maybe call a back file mate. So it's the same concept of the back rank, except for the fact that it's actually up a file this time. So the first thing I see is that the king is blocked in by pawns, but has 2 squares it can go to, g8 and h7. g8 is covered by a queen from afar. So to be honest with you, the first thing I thought was, why don't I play queen g8? Because if the rook takes that, I have rook h1 and then checkmating after I take the queen. This doesn't actually work because the king can take. Okay, when you're at these lower levels, like you're only at around 9 puzzles in, you want to look for forcing moves where there's only one response. And so in this case, I think I'm going to check, and black can block with whatever. He could have done the queen too, but I'll take that. Now the queen, I'm going to take that next, and we have our checkmate. Okay, notice that the square was covered by the queen because I didn't put the queen there. I left the queen where she was, guarding that square. All right, let's do another one here. Finally, we're getting a little bit more complicated. Not really. So there are more pieces on the board. That's what makes this a little bit more complicated to look at. You take it in and you try to figure out what everybody can do, but this one is a very simple and straightforward one. I think maybe this takes about 1 second to solve because it's a common formation. And this is something I call the back rank bump. What we're doing here is we're going to have a king on the back rank where it can be checked just like otherwise, except this time there's an escape square. So I see I have a check and it's guarded by the knight, but the king has an escape square. And so this type of bump where we check the king and it forces it to move away. We bump it away from a square to where we really want it to be and targetable. Before I play the checkmate, I'd just like to point out that the next thing I kind of instinctually look at is I look at a queen check, king over, and I actually think about, can I play queen here or a bishop somewhere on this diagonal? Now, I don't have that. I don't have a bishop. I don't have a light squared bishop in this game, but it's still kind of a pattern that hits my mind immediately. So we're going to watch what a particular type of back rank bump that I call the bump and run. Here's what we see. Watch me bump the king over, and now we run after it. So what my eyes are looking at is, there is any white piece that's covering the square like a knight or something, and no, there is not. So we're just going to checkmate. Very easy. Okay, what do we have here? Hardly any checks, but what I see is that the king is boxed in fairly well by its own pieces. And so I have 3 squares that the king has in its 3x3 box, the squares around it, and they all fall on a light square diagonal. Huge hint. I see that, and the first thing I want to do is put a bishop here or a bishop here. I see that bishop c4 would be checkmate because it covers all 3 squares. Very, very important thing when you're attacking a king, and look what squares are uncovered. And if you highlight them, you can see that they all fall on the same light square diagonal, which is a gigantic red flag waving in your face that you should probably put something on the light square diagonal. See? Notice how he tried to block the diagonal, and I just took it. I took everything. Okay. Very classic idea here of utilizing an open diagonal, open file to attack the king. This bishop is pinned. This is something you'll get with experience where that bishop is pinned. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and win a queen. And now checkmate is to follow. Okay. We have my first instinct here, take the knight. But I see that the king covers it and the rook covers it, so that's not going to work. So the next thing I see is that the king is in a back rank formation, a back rank mating formation, because there are 3 things blocking it. So I think what I would like to do here is actually take a second to think about this, because I don't see it immediately. I thought I was going to go check in the back, but the rook will just block. So what I see is if the queen goes into the back, the rook will block, because if the knight blocks, the queen will take that, and we have our back rank formation. Wait, but isn't there a hole in G2? No, the knight covers that. That's the thing. So this, speaking to you, helps me to realize, of course, what the answer is. I think I got it about 10 seconds ago, is what do I do if the rook blocks? Well, thankfully, we have our knight covering that square as well. So how do I realize that this is a back rank idea? Well, it's because I see 3 white pieces in front of a king, and I have a straight moving piece. It could be a rook. Okay, it could be a rook. It could be a queen. It's the queen in this case. Check. Okay, he does give me the knight. If the rook had gone to f8, I would just play queen takes that, and it's mate. So when I take this knight, I want you to realize that there is a hole in the white formation in front of the king, but it is covered by a black piece. Equally good would have been a pawn here, because that covers the square, or if this bishop had somehow reached the diagonal, that would work too. But in this case, I'm just going to take this. Okay, we'd have to do both. Checkmate. So I see here that, again, I have a very, very clogged formation in the back, and I have a check available. So the first thing I'm going to calculate is a check to the king. King has only 1 legal move. It's here. And then do I have any other checks? Yes, I do. It's the pawn up. And then that is almost checkmate, except for the fact that the queen can take it, but I'll take it again, and it's check again. And I'll have a queen and a knight against a rook and a knight. That's winning. So how do I reach this conclusion? I think that if I check this way, I have 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 pieces that can block. Seems like that's probably not going to work. Another thing that I noticed but didn't use is the fact that the rook is undefended. So I could have done something like, if this were a slightly different position, something like check, and then pick up the rook next move. It's not check, it doesn't work here, but that's something I would look at. So check. Let's check again. Let's check again. And that's all they ask for us. They think that the game thinks we can win the game from there. Just being up a queen for a rook. Okay, easy. Back rank formation. It's just slid over. 1. Mate and 1. And when you see mate and 1, you take it. Okay, we are white. And I yet again see a back rank formation here. Notice that the white pawn covers that square. It's unnecessary, however, there's a queen covering that square as well. But I think maybe this is tempting me to play like queen g5 or something, but I'm not gonna. I'm just going to mate on the file. It doesn't look like a back rank, but it's a back file, same as we saw earlier. Checkmate. Okay, the rook is pinned. And this is one of those puzzles where I start to get a little confused about the board orientation. I guess I'm playing black, so that I have a black pawn, so it must be going this way. So there are no board coordinates. So it is always kind of confusing to me, especially since sometimes you play black, sometimes you play white. This seems fairly simple. I think I'm just going to take the rook and push the pawns. Oftentimes when you see an endgame you can simplify into a pawn promotion, you can just do that. So let's go ahead and do this. Simple. Breaking into a castled formation is always a complicated task. When I see this, the first thing I want to think about is attacking h7. And so we can do that with something like this. So this is the first thing I just immediately see. The second thing that you want to see when you see a triangle formation is, can you just crack the top? Because if you take it enough times, you'll get a naked queen here just attacking the king. That's a great thing to do. But oftentimes what that does is it opens up the 7th rank. So just imagine in your head, if you see in a head, okay, I understand it's going to be illegal. Stay with me here for just a second. If you already see a head in this puzzle, okay. If we were to take and take and take and take and take, it would just be the queen against that king, right? Okay. Well, we'd have at least a perpetual check. Back and forth, except for 2 problems. 1, there's a queen here, so I don't get the perpetual. And 2, now you look around the board and you notice that you have more pieces. And what you see is actually a very, 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 very common thing. Guys, this is a huge attacking idea. If you can get this in your head, remember it. A bishop on c4 pins the f7 pawn. And when you start to see the triangle formation of the kings, even in the middle game, even in an even game where there isn't some sort of tactic, you should be thinking about transferring your bishop from the b1, h7 diagonal to the other one, a2, g8. Because this tends to be very hard to crack, but if you can use a bishop on the long diagonal, on the semi-long diagonal here, from c4 usually, sometimes b3, then this formation becomes a lot weaker. So we're going to go boom. That was it. Okay, that was it. So this is a mate in 2. I'm going to speed up a little bit, check, and then it was going to be mate here. All right. So it appears that this is hanging, right? But it's guarded by a bishop. However, we're in check. That's an important thing to notice, and we attack the queen. So how can we escape all of this with extra material? Let's see. So the key to this puzzle is actually we're already a piece up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces on the board, and white only has 3. Why would they start us off already in a winning position? The concept here, the thematic concept, is that we actually just lost something here. No. The thematic position is, how do we save the bishop, really? And so they start us off down a piece to see if we can like somehow figure out the combination in order to stay up a piece. So right now, white is threatening to take our bishop. Like if we move the king, we'll lose the bishop, and then it's even material. So what we're going to do is we're going to realize that if we're attacking a queen, all we have to do is save our king, and then we can take the queen. I think a lot of players may miss that concept. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw away our queen. Yeah. That's not actually going to really work here. So I'm pretty sure I could just pull back the bishop and save the piece. If he takes a queen, we'll take a queen. If he takes a piece, then we're okay. So let's see. What can we do here to get out of this check while saving our queen? We have to Because our queen is attacked, we have to move some piece such that we threaten their queen. And if we move the king, then our queen hangs and theirs doesn't. That's bad. So I'm still fairly certain it's bishop back, but let's talk it out, okay? So if I go king here, we lose a queen and we're toast. If I go king anywhere else, we lose the queen. So if I go queen here, we lose the queen for nothing. So that's bad. So the only other thing we can do is move the bishop back here. Now, if we move the bishop back, they take our queen. We take a queen. They take our bishop. And we have to figure out a way to win material there. Let's see. No, sorry, we already took the knight. That's the answer. We don't have to win material. So yes, we're correct. Trade queen. We lose our bishop, but that's okay. We're already up the other piece. Interesting endgame. We only have pawns left. Okay, so because we only have pawns left, we have to basically resist these pieces from stopping us from getting a queen. We need to get a queen. How do we do that? Usually when you have a bishop like this, a lot of players will think, oh, okay, I'll push one more and then I'll figure it out. Well, that's the wrong answer. When you use two pieces to fight a bishop, what you typically need to do is use one to assist the other across a light square. We have a light square bishop defending, so what we need to do is assist that pawn across a light square. The h-pawn is already in position to do that, so we're going to play probably g3, g2, g1 queen. But we can't just start moving pieces. We need to figure this out. So that was about g3. What's a possible response? Well, how about knight back? Okay, g2. How about knight back? Then g1 queen, and we win. Okay. g3, what if he pushes a pawn? Now, this is an interesting thing. I've even seen grandmasters do this. I don't know if they do this intuitively or consciously or something. They will like count down the individual moves to queening. When I see a pawn race, all I need to figure out is that I'm already across the halfway line. I'm on the white side of the board. And this white pawn isn't. That's all I need to know. I don't count the number of moves or anything. I just see which one is farther up the board. And I say, I've crossed the middle and you haven't. Therefore, black queen's first. So there's no pawn race that works here. This pawn race doesn't work either, even if the bishop were out of the way. So I think we're just going to go g3. And the knight decides to move back. How about g2? And now I think we're just going to queen. It was easy. Okay, nothing to see there. Got it. So I see that the queen is in line with the rook. If only I could do two things. Move the knight and move the king out of the way. Well, I can move the knight here, but unfortunately, and then if the king moves, I can take the rook. Yay. Unfortunately, a queen will take that. So that's why the queen is there. So I think what I'm going to do instead is go the other way. And now I've foreseen this. I wouldn't have just thrown the knight away. I'm going to push the king away. This is called checking off. I'm going to check the king off of the rook. Check. And now the king had to go away from the rook. The rook is undefended. We take it. Okay? Simple. All right. Looking at this one, I don't know why I have a bishop in the corner. Perhaps it's just to make the material even so it's a fair puzzle. I see a back rank formation, and I don't see any reason why I shouldn't take it. And yeah, easy. Okay, that was a 1300 puzzle. I'm not sure why. Okay, simple take, promote, back rank mate. Now we're just going to have to stop the pawn. Usually you want to stop a pawn from behind. I'm up a rook. That's an extra rook. Easy win. Okay. We're in an opening position in this case. White has 3 pieces. Black has 3 pieces. Everybody has 2 rooks and a queen. I can trade rooks, and that's the first thing I see. But we don't want to... I fell for my own bad habit against something that I should have done. I started looking at moves instead of actually taking stock of what we have in the position. So what we have here is we have a targeted rook. It's attacked once and defended once. That makes it a target. The second thing we have is a bishop that's hanging. So what we're going to want to do is figure out how we can take advantage of this, and the king. So I think what I can try to do is get some sort of a fork, and I'm trying to work out how a fork would work here. I don't actually see how it would work. The other weird thing is my king is in an odd spot, and I don't know why. My rook is also hanging. This could be one of those rare defensive puzzles. So, of course, that makes a lot of sense. This bishop is actually trapped. If the knight moves away, this square is no longer defended, so I would just take the rook, the knight would go back, and then I would play something like this and forking the two pieces, and the bishop is almost trapped, and so that's the answer. Yep, see, it had to go to the one square, and then we take this. Let's see what else. Let's see. We've got... Would love it if this were a queen, right? But it's not. It's the king. So, I think what we're going to do is figure out a way to deliver the queen to the square anyway. And so I see a back rank formation yet again. Knight blocks this square. So we're going to go check. We're going to go check. And we're going to go checkmate. So that's little round the rosy there. Okay. I'm playing white, and I see all this firepower pointed at the king. Unfortunately, the knight is pinned, so it cannot move. But we can still checkmate anyway with a little everybody's favorite smothered mate. Okay, we got 1, 2, covered by 1, 2, 3. So this bishop is probably not a target. If we want to make it a target, we're going to have to trade off other stuff first. We got a knight attacking a king. We have an uncastled king and a pinned bishop. So how can we make this work for us? Shall we calculate the exchanges first? I suppose so. By the way, about this point, about 1500, I have to start thinking for longer. And about 1800 is roughly where I have to go into maybe a minute think or more. And about 2000 is where I usually, not always, but usually start to miss some. So we're at 28 puzzles here. I want to get to 30 before I actually run into some trouble. So let's just calculate a little bit. Take and take and take and take. And then the rook is hanging in the corner. So it could go like this, but I just see a castle and then that comes to nothing. What else do we have? This one seems particularly difficult. How about knight takes first? Then we have knight takes here. It becomes pinned. We could attack it again, but then a castle. And I'm not seeing how that works out for anything. There seems to be no win of material. Now, one thing I thought about doing was just simply like push, push to chase the queen away. And now this thing is actually going to be threatened. So if we pushed and took, now we can go knight back. Attacking the queen. And where would the queen move to? It can move to basically d5 and that's it. So I definitely like the idea of ganging up on the bishop a little bit more and queen b7. So we just got to put stuff in the right order. What if we go bishop takes, knight takes, and before we calculated the knight take, let's undo that. Let's take the pawn. And the rook is attacked. And the knight is attacked, so that's a straight fork. So we go rook over, we take check, take, take, take. And I think we're actually still good because we've won the piece. So that should be enough, even though there's a rook in our camp. So that's bishop take, knight take. What if bishop take, pawn take? What if bishop takes and then the pawn takes? I still think we can go... That's the reason. That's the reason why the rook is undefended. So, yeah. Now we're going to take the pawn because it's undefended. Now we take the knight. Or do we take... Yeah, we do take the knight, right? I don't think there's anything else. Pretty sure it's queen takes knight. just like we calculated. I'll take the knight, the queen will take, we take, it takes here, but that's just okay. We just develop from there. Yeah. I don't have any other trick or anything. Yeah. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. Oh. Okay, I get it. So we want to play rook here, but it's pinned to the king. So maybe we can think of something else. How's about we have this check, we have this check, we have a check here as well, which doesn't seem to work, but maybe. And then we have a check here. And we also have pawn check. Oh, well, that's pretty obvious, I would think. Is there something I'm missing? No. Pawn check, right? Yeah. Right? Yeah, mate in one. Okay. Yeah, sometimes you have to be careful. Just make sure your eyes aren't fooling you. Oh, easy. Weakness of the F2 diagonal. Pretty classic. Nothing can answer us in that regard. Okay, we have a back rank formation. This is a cool little idea. You usually see this in the corner on an open H file with the bishop on the long diagonal, but we're going to do it here. King has one escape square, and then we're just going to go ahead like this. And now this rook is hanging, but so is our bishop. So I think first thing you want to see is your rook is attacked, right? So you want to see, is there something you can attack that's higher than a rook? Well, the king is higher than the rook. If there were a queen on the board, that would work too, but there isn't one. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to get rid of the bishop, take a rook. Easy. Okay, this rook is pinned. Therefore, it is not defending this pawn. All right, well, let's be professionals here. Let's calculate it out. I'm pretty sure it's queen takes pawn. Queen takes, king has to go in the corner, and then we have 3 attackers on that rook, but also the rook is pinned. So I don't think we actually take the rook. I think we're going to take the pawn first because it's check, and then the rook can't block because it's mate. So we're going to go here. And what you want to realize is that this rook is attacked 3 times and defended twice. So that's why it's a target. But this pawn is undefended. Let's start there. That was it. We don't have to go farther. Looks like, I guess that means anything is winning after that point. All right, we have a knight against a king. Interesting thing is that there are no queen checks when a knight is around a king when the queen is close up, because the knight covers the square that would check from the diagonal and covers the square that would check straight on and can block on the diagonal if there were ever a check this way. Or if the queen could somehow come here, no, she can't because there's a knight here. So the knight actually guards very important squares that could check the king. Very interesting. So let's see what else we can do. We can check this way. Knight blocks. We take it. Excuse me, we take it. Drawing arrows on chess.com has never been very easy, I don't think. So we're going to take that, and then we're going to be up material, I think. But we're, of course, in check, so we got to deal with that. Well, why can't we just take the queen? Is there a trick? Why is this an 1800 puzzle when we just... I don't understand this. We're not losing anything. We'll be up a queen. What is happening in this puzzle? 1845. 1845 is the difficulty of that puzzle. It's just a hanging queen. I don't understand that. Okay, we've seen this formation. We're pinning... Right? We've seen this. The empty triangle. There's a triangle defense here, but there's no bishop on g7. So I'm pretty sure we're just going to have to take... This is just like pattern training, right? And then the typical thing you would want to do is try to get a rook to the h-file after that. But we're going to see if we could figure out something even better. I'm not seeing one. Sometimes you want to try h3 or even rook h5 in certain circumstances, because maybe if the pawn takes, it's like checkmate or something. So what else can we do here? We can attack a knight. It's hanging. The queen doesn't really have much of a threat. So is it really just take, check, move, and then take the knight? Check again. It's got to be, right? Take, moves, king h8. We take the knight. And then I want to just go boom, boom, boom. I don't think that's possible in one move. Do I have anything better? If I play rook h3 and intend to go like this, Doesn't seem to work, so let's just go ahead and play that. Well, let's be proficient here. We're going to take g6. Take is the only good move, because otherwise king g7 or queen g7 is mate. So has to take back, and we're going to take and move to the corner is the only legal move, and then we take the knight, and then the king can move here or here, and then maybe we just cycle around. And then we mate this way, and so that should be good enough. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's just like maneuver. After that, you just maneuver the rook into position and the bishop, and maybe we should take a look at that later to figure out exactly what the finish was. There may be a crystal clear finish, but I'm not sure. Okay, we have a target almost. It's defended twice and attacked only once, so it's not officially a target. A target is something that is attacked and defended the same amount of times. You can waste a lot of time trying to attack things that are not targets. In our camp, we have a bishop, and the only other thing I'm seeing here is that if we take and the king takes, we have a check. We could check first if we want, but unfortunately we've got like a mate threat here. So if we just say, you know, bishop c4, we just checkmate against us. So that's bad. So let's not do that. Let's try to be a little bit more proficient with our maneuvers. So I do see that there's an artificial back rank here. So there is this sacrifice because the king would have to move, I believe. Yeah, because otherwise it's mate. Alright. If we take, it's check and a capture, so we're going to look at that. King moves, queen here is checkmate. Right? So take, check. King has to go back. Check again. What do you know? That's mate. You find that sort of stuff by figuring out that things are checks and captures. And I don't think this was any exception. So we've got a queen with a discovery. We can discover an attack against the queen, so that may be the way to go. So take. Queen can't take. Pawn can't really take either. So we would take and take. What if we take, the queen just goes away, we win the rook. Yeah. Now we're not going to take with the queen, that seems to be the bait move. But there's a rook back there. Aha. Failed to account for this, but I don't really see the issue here. We just take it. We're up a queen. What could be the problem? There isn't one. Excellent. We've made 37 so far. So this one just looks like a hanging queen. I mean, what's the problem here? Am I getting mated or something? Alright. I take the queen. This is really the only thing that worries me. Pretty sure I can just step backward, check. Probably just move over or something. Don't understand the issue. I'm queening also. Okay. I guess sometimes you just get a pass. So the rook will take here. That's not good. So I do have a check, I have a check, and I have a check, and I have a capture. So this knight is attacked twice and defended twice. 1, 2, 1, 2. It's a target. Okay, this bishop is attacked. So we can also work on that. What I would love to do would be just to checkmate immediately, but there's a rook in the way. So one idea, doesn't work, would be this. Blocking, but the rook would take it. So that doesn't work. So let's try my original idea. Check. King moves to the back. And then I thought it was going to be queen takes knight, rook takes, and then we take this bishop. Rook comes back. In fact, Close to the answer. There's still a problem of a rook. So the idea was that would generate a passed pawn. Let's see what we're going to do instead. Let's think that through again. Check. King moves. We tried queen takes. Doesn't work because rook takes. And then if we take the bishop, we only have a rook for 2 rooks. So unless we queen immediately or something, that's a lost position. So it can't be that. So what we're going to do is we're going to back up a move. 1 move. I don't see how there's any difference between... There's nothing to be gained by doing anything other than taking the bishop. I can't take the rook here. So check, king, queen, rook. Take the rook. Doesn't work. King takes it. That's nothing. So instead we're going to figure out if there's a different thing we could do with the queen. Check, king move. No, I'm not quite seeing anything there either. So let's try this check. Rook takes it. I take back. Seems to be nothing. It's starting to get hard. We're in over 2,000 now for the rating. I'm not seeing this one immediately. Now here's one thing I did note. I could sack the queen if I got enough for it. If I could somehow take this and this and this, that would be a winning position. Not quite seeing anything there. I have a check here, which could be it. Take, and if somehow the rook took, I would check, but there's a knight there, so. But none of that matters. My queen is hanging. Let's see. What if the rook took right now? This rook would take back. I don't have this rook, and I don't have that bishop there. If I could add an attack to the bishop, that would be nice. But even if I won that bishop cleanly, would that be enough material? It'd be a rook and a knight for a queen, so it's close. So I looked at pawn, rook, pawn, but then a rook just comes over and takes the pawn, so I don't have anything there either. I want to be able to take this pawn twice, and I can't. I want to be able to take this knight 3 times, and I can't. Guess I could take this bishop, but there's no real way to do that either. What if I just moved the queen away? Is that a threat? Not really. I can't take the knight. What if I attack the rook? Is that a threat? Not really. Oh. Oh. I have a back rank system. Check, move, queen moves. And then I actually do have a threat. I can just take the rook. When king takes back, check. Knight blocks, take that, checkmate. Oh no, not checkmate. The knight's no longer there. But it's still a winning endgame because I pushed the pawn and it's winning. So that would be check, move, king. And if I had an extra move, that's what I have to figure out. If I have an extra move, I would have to figure out some way to take the rook. King would have to take, it's forced. Take the bishop, take the knight, guard the pawn. Check, move, queen moves. And then how is this stopped? I guess rook over? No, queen would take that. Maybe the bishop would just move. Pawn, king, queen. Bishop guards. But then there's breaks the connection here. Yeah, it would have to be bishop. Bishop e6, so it's guarded and everything. Huh. A little bit stuck on this one, folks. I think I may just have to take the risk on failing this one. I'm not seeing anything here. I don't have any more firepower. Okay, we were right. It's gotta be queen F, but then how do I deal with the bishop coming out? There has to be another move that I'm not seeing. I want to go queen F7. It's like a real chess move, but it doesn't feel tactical to me. Haha. Rook takes knight, and it's actually a mate threat. I missed this. I missed that this is a mate threat. Go ahead, take my queen. I dare you. Now it's easy. Oh, did it. Did it. That took a long time to figure out. Alrighty. Is this a checking off puzzle? Do I just check off the king? And then check again. Alright. We have a target in the corner. I need to win more than a piece, though, because I'm down a bishop and a rook. So this is probably going to be like a mating puzzle. I don't have a check on either of these squares. This is threatened twice. So what we need to do is either remove a defender, meaning the king or knight. Like if I could just play bishop takes knight somehow, then then the rook would hang. So I'm thinking it's going to be something like check. The king actually is almost out of legal moves. Right? There's only one legal move. Note the rook is pinned, of course, so it doesn't guard that square. So after the check, the king moves back, and then we have our back rank mating net again. Once our bishop is on d6, we have these three covered. So let's go with the idea of playing that back rank mate. Got it. No, I don't have it. Thought it would be check. So from the top, bishop, king, queen, check. And then it's forced that this rook goes back, and then I thought what I would have would be bishop here, check. And that would be mate, except for the knight guarding that square. So yet again, we have to get rid of that knight. Is there a method by which we can do so from such a position? I would love to just checkmate right here. Like, check, check, and then somehow move like a knight and checkmate. Can't do it. So, is there any chance that this is not a mating attack? That this is a queen trap or something like that? Well, that certainly makes things a lot easier, because this is definitely the threat. That is obviously a threat. So the question is, how do we like attack the queen? It can't move except to this square. Notice everything else is guarded. Oh, that's hanging. So that's not really a threat, actually. Thought that it was. Oh, this is so much easier. Alright, we just have to invert the order of the moves. We had the right answer the first time. So thankfully we got the first move immediately. So I wanted to check and then somehow check on this square. But the problem is the rook and knight are there. So how do we actually solve this? It's like this. Mate and 3. All right, that was a 2100 puzzle. Took me a little bit. I was just simply looking in the wrong areas, but the concept itself was fairly straightforward. So this one looks like it's going to be some sort of an attack on h7. If we could just triangulate, like with checks and stuff, to get to there, that'd be good. We have a king hanging and we have a rook hanging. They are on a back rank together, so it looks like I could potentially take advantage of that. The other thing you want to look at, especially in these higher level tactics, is the fact that the last move removed something from the back rank. It's a huge hint. You always want to look at what had just moved. So I see that we can go check, and if taken, check. And then no matter what, I think we can take the rook. And we're probably winning there because we have 4 extra pawns. It looks fairly close. It picks up a rook and 2 pawns. Do we have better though? What if he just doesn't take the bishop? Oh, then we skewer and then yeah, see? Check. King over. Check in the corner if he doesn't take the bishop. That's why it's important. Remember I said that rook is hanging. That's why you look at these targets all over the board. Queen is a target, but I didn't have any need to talk about that. Okay, I think we're just going to pick up the rook. Now we grab the rook. Yes, let's check to make sure there's nothing better. There can't be, right? Yeah, all right, at 2165. We are 3 away from setting a personal record this week. So let's see if we can bring it on home. We've got a target and a target and a target and a target. So everything's undefended. Look, actually, what is defended? Look, I'm going to highlight all the things that are defended. The end. We have a mate threat from white, so we're going to have to check. And we're going to have to probably wiggle around the board attempting to attack a rook, like with a fork, and take it. So something like queen here, check, taking a rook. We can also pin a queen to a king. If we could somehow get that king to go over to the e-file, we would have a pin. So one of the fun things is you can trade and coordinate on a square, like take, check, bring the rook, check. And the point is, yes, it's attacking a king, but more importantly, it takes over the f1 square. After something like king to g1, we could go check and then arrive on that f1 square. So that's something to keep in mind. However, it appears that the king can go this way, and then we have to come in on the rank instead. Let's go with that. And again, the point was that I'm coordinating on the f1 square. I would love to just go boop and win the queen. That's not going to work. I think I'm going to go check, and then the king will have to come away. If it comes up the e-file, I've got the queen to f1 because the rook coordinated on that square. And otherwise, if here, then we can coordinate on the d1 square instead with a check this way. Perhaps the rank check is better, but let's just get moving. Okay, as I said, I believe it's the f1 square, but I don't have any proof of that yet. So it would be f1 check. We can skewer and then bump the king away and win a queen. That would be good. Looks to be right. Yep. Okay, it didn't matter which way the king went because we'd have a skewer on the queen or more checks. So the point of that idea was to coordinate 2 pieces onto the same square even after the king leaves. Yes, the king being there was important, but it's more to do about using tempi to get 2 pieces on attacking the same square in the endgame. Well, I assume that's just, I have to take the rook, right? What's happening if I do that? If I do that, I think the knight moves away and I'm down a piece, but I could take the knight right now, and then I'm down a rook, so that's also bad. He would just take, and I would have to take, and that's not good either. I have a check that I can use, and then another check I can use, and then take the other rook. Pretty sure that's going to be it. Skewer. Take a rook with tempo. Now, I assume I take the other rook. Let's not waste much more time. Excellent. Cool. We are at 43 correct in a row, and we are cruising. This looks like a discovered check. Let's see. So our queen is attacked, and if we do a discovery, that would be the checking piece. The queen would be the thing giving check, so that means the knight would just take it, and that would solve any discovery. There's nowhere good for the bishop really to go anyway, as far as I can tell. So perhaps we're not looking at such an easy, straightforward one. Shouldn't be much of a surprise here. So it's hard to ignore the fact that we've just got a king across from a queen, but we do have to look at the rest of the board. Everything is safe. This pawn is not safe, but that's not going to be our target. We can't just win this by winning just a pawn. We are down a knight, if I'm counting correctly, and I am. We have 2 pawns for that knight, but we're going to have to like pick up the knight if we want to do anything good here. So what if we just got rid of the knight, which is controlling this square? And then do we have a fork? We do. Okay, so the rook is weakly defended, and what I see is that it's defended by the queen, and this knight is defended by the queen. Because my rook is attacking the knight once and it's only defended once, it makes it a target. We have a king, who is always a target, and nothing else. There's nothing else in the position that is undefended or weakly defended or something. So what we want to look at is either adding an attack to the knight, or we want to just look at removing it right away and then doing something. And so we see that if we take here, the queen is actually overworked. The rook becomes undefended. We check. And then we might even have a mate if the king steps on the wrong square. So the king would have to defend the rook, right? Take, check. If the king goes this way, we're probably going to go here, and he goes here, and then we fork, and then we like win the queen and stuff. So that's not going to work. So we're going to go take the knight. Queen takes back. We're going to check, and the king is actually going to defend the rook this time. Something like this. But we have a skewer. That hits the rook. King would have to move, and then we could take the rook. Could also use the queen to do it. No, we would just, yeah, king would move, we'd take the rook, the queen would be there, and we're still losing, we still haven't gained our material. It's only an exchange, right? We drop an exchange and we gain an exchange. So we do have to pick up the rook cleanly and then somehow figure out some way to convert. So it's not just enough, not quite enough. What if we take the knight, then we check, then we check again with the bishop as shown. Is there anything else we can do to try to win a queen or something? Well, I mean, the first thing I see is if the king goes king f2, we just take on f1 with check. King would probably leave. And then we go check here and pick up the queen almost. So that's an idea. But I assume that that's not going to happen and the king will just drop back. In which case, how are we going to continue? Unfortunately, there's never going to be a mate on g2 because there's a bishop there. I suppose we just take the rook right away. Are there any other defenses? I mean, that would be mate if it went to g1. So, are there any other defenses here? I don't think so. I think that's everything, right? g1 is queen takes the rook mate. f2 is queen takes here and then here. And, well, we're at least drawing, but no. We have a lot more material. We have a lot more firepower. The attack continues. So we can check and like check here, trade queens, something like that, win an endgame. We're up 2 pawns. Earlier when I said that didn't matter, it mattered. So let's go ahead and do this. No, we lost. Oh, that's our first X. I did not see that coming. We failed to get our 44 flawlessly. I think we are going to take a little break there, and we're going to pick this up in the next video. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope some of this was helpful. Let's see how high I can get before I get 2 more X's.